Hi, I'm Wade Pfaff, a social anthropologist and Canadian Black music historian with York University and a Black People's History of Canada project. I've always found that teaching Canadian Black music history has a surprising impact on people. Canadian Blacks and non-Blacks of any age are typically surprised to learn how deeply involved with early Black music creation Canadian Black people were, especially in jazz. History can provide us with plenty of Canadian examples of Black musical excellence and achievement, and some Canadian Black musicians have made a deep impact on world music in various genres, and we are not only speaking of hip-hop. Global stars like Drake and The Weeknd are the newest beneficiaries of Canada's long history with making music very well. Some would say that we are speaking of American Black music, but is it really just American? Students look for entertainment after their study time. A course on Canadian Black music history should make learning an entertaining multimedia experience. I encourage you to use dynamic historical photographs and short audio and video clips in your lectures and presentations, regardless of the age group you're teaching. Let's imagine this course on Canadian Black music history. The conversation must begin in the 19th century when land still needed to be cleared and fortifications built. Black loyalists, refugee slaves, and free Blacks from the Caribbean and the United States settled in every part of Canada, helping to build roads, fortifications, and cities. Many of these port towns harbored musical people who crossed borders regularly and spread music trends from port to port. Many newly arrived Black people had their own music traditions, which came from work songs, folk melodies, church spirituals, minstrel songs, and popular ditties in their former communities. And some were playing in marching bands, minstrel troops, choirs, church groups, and orchestras. Music pioneers arose out of several Black communities across Canada at the turn of the 20th century, but most had to obtain their fame outside of Canada, in the United States or in Europe, because of racist attitudes in Canada at the time. At the end of the American Civil War in 1865, 65% of Canadian Black people relocated to the United States, but many became Canadians. Between 1881 and 1885, the Transcontinental Railway was completed, which allowed people of all ethnicities to share musical ideas more rapidly. For the first 50 years of the 20th century, traveling back and forth across the American border was easy for most Canadians, Black and white. Whites played Black music, like Benny Goodman, and vice versa, Portia White, for instance, who is an opera singer. Canadian Black American music have the same roots, follow the same trajectory, and share the same territory. A course on Canadian Black music history will explore the various elements of early 20th century society in North America, which contributed to the creation and distribution of Black music of various types, but will specifically focus on blues and jazz at the turn of the 20th century, and with particular focus on the Canadian Black experience, the musicians, club owners, organizations, and venues which had the greatest influence on Canadian Black identity and equal rights. These trailblazers and forward-thinking institutions laid the ground for a more equitable entertainment industry, non-segregated public facilities, equal pay for Blacks and women, and greater opportunities in industry, sports, and public office. A course on Canadian Black music history will also discuss the dance, fashion, and language trends invented in the jazz era between 1914 and 1955, which still resonate today in popular culture and have had a permanent effect on Black people's identity and expression. We will discuss the psychological impact of jazz style and public influence on white society, and how the cultural appropriation of Black North American tropes continues to inform modern youth trends worldwide today. Jazz music production itself has gone through many transformations since its inception just before the First World War. The path from Dixieland jazz to bebop and fusion is long and winding, but changing lifestyles and priorities have always informed the creators of jazz music and forced continual change and challenges to the rules of convention. There is no doubt about the tremendous influence that media has had on the dissemination of Black music and music culture. Racial stereotypes were and are pervasive in North American society, and this course will briefly discuss the role of the media in perpetuating negative racial tropes and in preventing and promoting Black equality in the early and mid-20th century. A course on Canadian Black music history must highlight a few central themes, for which there will be local historical examples where you live. There is an overlap of different styles of playing between the decades. For instance, you will see that ragtime overlaps with Dixieland, which overlaps with swing, which overlaps with bebop, and so on. There are similarities between our two cultures and our two nations, between America and Canada, between Canada and the Caribbean. There's social segregation, which expresses itself differently in our two nations. Then there are racist bylaws in Canada. In America, they had racist Jim Crow laws. We have bylaws. Then there's exclusion from musicians' unions, which took an extra 40 years in Canada. Discrimination in education, negative racial stereotyping in media imagery, cultural appropriation of Black music and dance, then the exploitation of the Black performers themselves. Here's a few ideas for projects for different age groups. Grade 4 to 7 projects, they could write a short biography on a Black Canadian musician from one of the decades before 1959. They could give an example of a racist practice in Canada before 59. And they could write a paragraph on how the Transcontinental Railway helped spread Black music. Here are a few grade 8 to 10 projects. Pick a Canadian city and explain in 300 to 500 words how Black Canadians there successfully resisted discriminatory bylaws prior to 1959. Or pick a Canadian Black musician and explain in 300 to 500 words how they were significant in their time and why they have significance today. Or pick a genre of Black music before 1959 and write 300 to 500 words describing how Black Canadians were significant to that genre. Grade 11 and 12s are capable of more detailed work. They could write 1,500 words explaining how Black Canadian musicians helped the Canadian Equal Rights Movement. Or they could design a 15-minute PowerPoint presentation on a Black musician's career and why they are significant to Canadian history. So those are a few project ideas for your public school and high school students. I encourage you to go to a Black People's History of Canada website for further resources on Canadian Black music history, where I've provided many of the names of historical Black Canadian musicians, the communities they came from, the venues that were important in various different time periods in music history in Canada. And so I thank you very much for your time and good hunting.